On top of all of the wins that we're seeing with President Trump, one of the things I really, really enjoy about President Trump is his outside the box thinking and his approach to taking down the deep state, the globalists, and unraveling the Marxist swamp policies that the third term of Obama, masquerading itself as a Biden Harris ticket and then administration / regime, have done. And the beauty of this, it's being done with a very different eye and a very different goal. It's not done with the usual warmongering and throw money at it approach. President Trump is, with his outside the box thinking, is changing things by saving us money and manpower and not taking us into war. And I'm not just talking about what he's doing on the international stage, but also what he's doing domestically. So let me give you the lay of the land so you know where we're going in this report. I'm going to cover the latest news of today, Friday, April 11th. But I'm going to do it weaving through the different chess moves that President Trump is doing to accomplish this goal. Now, I know in the past we've said, and we've thought, rightfully so, that this is because President Trump is he's not a Washington politician. He comes from the private sector. Oh, but brothers and sisters, it's way more than that. So strap in as I break down the news for you. And also we pull back the curtain and see what Trump is really doing. If we're ready, give me a thumbs up. All right, here we go. First of all, I want to follow up on what I reported on the other day. By the way, if you're watching the replay on this, for some odd reason, notifications aren't going out like they were even like a week or two ago on live stream. So it seems like a majority of you will be seeing this in a replay. I will put timestamps. If you come late, it takes me a little while after the live stream to end to go back and put the timestamps, but it will be there. But let me kind of give you kind of what we're going to do. We're going to look at the power of 145 and how it's doing all kinds of things because of President Trump's chess moves. But I want to follow up on what happened to how's it pronounced? Pitafik, space base commander, Space Force Colonel Susanna Myers. She goes by Susan Myers. I reported on this in the last live stream I did. I reported, if you missed the report, here's the Cliff Notes or the Spark Notes, whatever generation you were scholastically. She is the commander of the base in Greenland. And when Vice President J.D. Vance went and was there and spoke to the people and what have you, she tried to distance herself as the commander of the base from President Trump's policy. She sent an email out to everyone, trying to unify everyone and saying that essentially that she's not political, but she's essentially not in agreement with the administration and the higher up. Remember, President Trump is a commander in chief, with the administration or President Trump's agenda, policies, etc. Right away, Pentagon spokesman Sean Purnell said, actions to undermine the chain of command or to subvert President Trump's agenda will not be tolerated at the Department of Defense. This was a story broken by military.com. Great website. If I've never served, but my father's a retired corpsman in the Navy. My brother was in the Navy. I have a half brother who was in the Navy. If you ever see us together, people think we look alike, except he's taller and skinnier than me. So if you ever see a taller, skinnier version than me and you're in Florida, it might be my brother. If you see an older version of me, like a lot older version of me, but not that much older than me, because my dad's getting close to 80 and he hasn't aged that much in the last 20 years. You're also in Florida. That might be my dad. But here we go. I don't I never served, but I do like reading military.com because they have really just fascinating stuff. If you like America and you like American military, they have fascinating articles. And they broke this story. And then we found out today exactly what I told you was going to happen yesterday. She has been relieved of her duty, rightfully so. So, by Space Operations Command Public Affairs, Pituffik Space Base Greenland, Colonel Susanna Myers, commander of Pituffik Space Base, was removed from command by Colonel Kenneth Clock, commander of Space Base Delta 1, for loss of confidence in her ability to lead. Commanders are expected to adhere to the highest standards of conduct, especially as it relates to remaining nonpartisan in the performance of their duties. Colonel Sean Lee has assumed command. And this is the right action that should have been taken. Oh, by the way, Gina was the first one to get everyone in the BCP family started in the conversation. Thank you for joining. Also, I see you, Big Job Ford. I see you out there. Appreciate y'all for being members of our BCP fan club here on YouTube. So we knew that canning was coming. Now, you can expect that there's going to be some blowback. There's going to be some negativity from the left that are going to call this either pettiness or maybe even misogynistic. Because if you remember, President Trump also fired Navy Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield. I report on that this past week as well. And you had Jasmine Crockett, the ridiculous new star of the Democrat Party. She had tweeted out, they fired Chatfield not because she couldn't do her job, but because she wouldn't hang up pictures of Trump and Hegseth. This ain't about merit. It's about ego. And by the way, Congresswoman Crockett ain't a word. Just saying. Congresswoman Sean Purnell, the Pentagon spokesperson, said a few days ago, I realize this may be a foreign concept to you, but here at the Department of Defense, if you just respect the chain of command and don't do your job, you will be replaced, period. So, folks, this is a new administration, and it's not just a new administration, it's a new commander-in-chief, and insubordination will not be tolerated. So let's get into President Trump and the power of 145. That's the actual tariff that's now on China. It's being reported in a lot of places as 125%, but it has been confirmed that it's 125% on top of the baseline 20% tariffs that were already put on China by President Trump. So it's effectively 145%. Now, on the surface, not knowing how President Trump operates, the left is calling a tit for tat, pettiness or whatever. Even if you like President Trump, some are just seeing this as just a trade war with China. But folks, let me break it down for you. It's way more than that. President Trump is expanding MAGA and freeing other countries from the grip of China. It's not just make America great again, it's make blank great again. And you can fill in other countries' names where you would put America. It is also forcing the world to pick sides so that we as United States, in formulating our policy, as President Trump, as the executive of the executive branch, works on foreign policy, he knows on which side of the divide the different countries are on. Are they on communist China's side, or are they on the side of freedom, fairness, liberty, and Western values? It's pretty good here, folks. I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna get into this, and let's get into it. Well, I'm getting into it right now, I should say. So here is the latest. The Chinese Communist Party has escalated its trade war with the United States by imposing a staggering 125% tariff on all American imports. This move comes in direct response to President Donald Trump's decisive action to raise tariffs on Chinese goods to an effective rate of 145%, aiming to counter Beijing's longstanding trade abuses and intellectual property theft. That's part of it. Yes, obviously it's a trade imbalance. And yes, they have been stealing our intellectual property theft. And the reason why the effective rate is 145% is because, remember, President Trump put a 20% tariff on them because of fentanyl, because of China sending fentanyl through our borders. So yesterday, Beijing foolishly tried to retaliate against us by imposing a 84% tariff. and then that was on Wednesday, and then we upped it to 104%, and then now it's 125% on top of the 20%, so it's 145. And China, in its huge miscalculation, just raised the tariff on us to 125%. So, sorry, the 104% on Chinese goods. And then today, that was yesterday. Then today, Friday, the CCP escalated to 125%. So it wasn't 105, it was 125% today. Yesterday it was 104%. They are playing this wrong. Now, President Trump knows that China has infiltrated our country at every level. It's really a shame that Mike Pence went the other way, because he was a fairly good vice president for President Trump during the 45th administration. But there was a very, very famous speech, talk, etc., however you want to classify it, given by Mike Pence, where he talked about China and China's encroachment into our country and how they have infiltrated every level, from possibly your little city council and mayor's office all the way up to people sitting on the legislative branches of your state government and your governor's mansion. And then obviously they owned, at least in part, the third Obama administration that we just thankfully escaped from, the 2021 to January 20th, 2025 regime of Biden-Harris. So President Trump knows that the infiltration has been very deep. And what you do is you cut off China where it most hurts, their power to effectuate things using the yuan or the dollar. Also, we also know that they have been manipulating currency for a very long time. So the CCP's retaliatory tariffs are set to take place tomorrow, are obviously a clear but failed attempt to undermine the U.S. economy and trying to push President Trump to back down. I have a feeling that we're going to stop at 145, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes up to 200%. This is what China said in their, this comes from the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Lin Jin. So he said today via the Global Times, quote, tariff and trade wars have no winners. China does not want to fight these wars, but it is not scared of them. And then the announcement of the new tariffs on us. Now, here's what President Trump is doing. He is forcing the world to take sides. Are you on the side of China? And I'm going to stop here, folks. I'm going to make an effort to call China by what we really should be calling them. Not PRC, the People's Republic of China, but Communist China. When I was a kid, and I would say probably, I think maybe in high school, we just started calling them China. But I remember, maybe it's because my grandpa was one of those Union Democrats, and he always called them Communist China, Communist China, Communist China. Am I the only one who was raised with the name of China? Maybe not the official name, but we would refer to it as Communist China to remind ourselves who they really were. Am I the only one? Let me know if you also grew up knowing China as Communist China. I'm going to go back and use that moniker for China more often so we can be reminded of what they truly are and who they truly are. President Trump is making Australia great again, because in a desperate plea yesterday, China pleaded Australia to join hands with them against President Trump's tariffs. And Australia rejected it yesterday, saying it is happy to keep negotiating with its long-term ally rather than join Beijing's chorus of aggrieved opposition to Washington. Now, I don't cover the geopolitics of Australia and China here, but if you're interested, it's a fascinating story of what happens when a Western culture allows the communist China to go in and infiltrate them and really have a lot of power in their internal and external affairs. Susan Harris remembers when we called it Communist China. Jackson Dog says that's what our family called them. Yeah. BCP, are you a 60 child? I am, and I learned some stuff about Nina and other countries. No, I was born in 1974. I'm 50. I'm a 70s kid. I grew up in the 80s mostly. But we call them communist China. And communist China has had their tentacles in Australia. But Australia says, you know what, China, we're not joining your chorus. We're going to sing. We're going to sing solo, because what was imposed to Australia was a 10% tax on Australian goods. Why would they want to join China that has an effective 145% tariff on them? The trade wars with China, but President Trump, thinking outside the box, is making China the our trade war with communist China the litmus test for which side you're on. So what did China do? Well, that didn't work yesterday. So what do they try to do? Well, desperate China is now pleading with the EU to, quote, jointly resist unilateral bullying of Trump's tariffs. Do you see what China is trying to do here? They're doing something very similar to what President Trump is doing, but President Trump is doing it very differently. Crush China and let everyone pick sides. Let them reveal who they are. At the same time, make it very obvious which side they should be on. Now, who did China cozy up with? Well, of course, another commie with Canberra over in Spain, the communist of Spain. But it's not it's so far we're not seeing a lot happening from the EU. President Trump also announced that there would be a new tariffs on pharmaceutical goods, and we see Sweden's big pharma making the right move. So let me just wrap this up. Chinese President Xi Jinping made the call as he met Spanish Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. State news agency has stressed the need for cooperation between the bloc and China in weathering Beijing's mounting trade war with Washington. China and Europe should fulfill their international responsibilities and jointly resist unilateral bullying practices, Xi said. He said not only would that safeguard their own legitimate rights and interests, talking about China, but also safeguard international fairness and justice. What about the fairness of everyone stopping our exports, but we give them an easy free ride with their imports? And China, of course, takes advantage of this with Uyghur slave labor. And President Trump cut off that loophole of where goods under $800 could come in and escape all those duties and taxes and fees and tariffs. He closed that loophole. And then if you look at this, what Spain is doing here, it's hypocrisy because they have a trade imbalance with China as well. By the way, there's still the back and forth between Navarro, it appears, and Elon Musk over the tariffs. People are saying, "Oh, look, Elon Musk chose wrong. He's killing Tesla. Tesla can't sell to that big market China. That big market China. Elon Musk is an idiot. He shouldn't have backed Trump." Let me just give the numbers real quick, folks, so you can see that this is ridiculous. The China Auto Dealers Association said that China imported 1,553 Model X cars and 311 Model S cars in 2024. I assure you that there are more than 300 Model S cars probably within a 5-mile radius of where I currently am in Southern California. I will be back in more sane Utah by not this weekend, but the following weekend. Can't wait to get out of here. That represents less than 0.5% of Tesla's total deliveries of 657,000 vehicles last year. So it sucks for Tesla to the point to less than 1%. So much for that talking point as a division between President Trump and Elon Musk. Now let's go on to what else President Trump and his people are doing. Trying to reestablish absolutely decimated relations with Russia. And what is President Trump doing here? Who is China and Russia's biggest allies to each other? Is BRICS, right? It's Russia and China, right? Russia and China. President Trump is also fortifying our relationship and weakening China by continuing I don't want to say cozying up, but opening up the lines of communication with Russia. He's signaling to Russia, hey, we are at a trade war definitely with China, and we know that you're cozy with China. Don't pick the wrong side. Don't pick the wrong side. So the other thing I want to report on is that Trump envoy Witkoff flew for the third time to Russia. He's in St. Petersburg, meeting directly with Putin so that we can open up, once again, dialogue with Russia, not ice them out. And that goes, remember, prosperity goes a long way to establishing peace. Zelensky doesn't want to do it. President Trump is thinking outside the box so we can get to peace in the Ukraine region. And then, now going to the other Swiss thing, pharmaceutical company Novartis announced plans to build 7 facilities in the United States and expand others in a $23 billion investment over 5 years on the heels of President Donald Trump's announcement of forthcoming tariffs on imported drugs. What is one of the issues that we discovered during the pandemic? That we are way too beholden and way too much dependent on China for our pharmaceuticals. How did this ever happen? How did we become beholden and at the mercy of communist China for our most basic pharmaceutical needs? Well, of course, as Mike Pence and others have broken down over the last several years, it's because they've infiltrated every level of government and people have sold out and been bought off by China. China plays a long game and they play a very deceptive game. And all of the administrations prior to, unfortunately, starting with Nixon going forward, we know that Clinton literally got cash from China on secret tarmac meetings, have been beholden to China. President Trump has not been and will not be. And he's thinking outside the box. Everyone's got to pick sides. And here is the bottom line that I want to mention this, which is a great win. Where is it here? They are going to be building these facilities with the goal of creating 4,000 additional U.S. jobs, 1,000 at Novartis, and then another 4,000 to support the 1,000 jobs at Novartis in these 7 brand new facilities, which will be in Indiana, New Jersey, and California. So the East Coast, the West Coast, and more Middle America. And here is the bottom line. The company wants to ensure all key Novartis medicines for U.S. patients will be made in the United States. President Trump using the tariffs not just to get countries to cooperate, but even for pharmaceutical companies to cooperate and produce what we need here in the United States, creating jobs and making sure that we are not beholden to our enemies for things that we need the most. All right, now I'm going to end with 2 more stories. President Trump, or 2 more news stories. Okay, you know how the left is always saying, well, who's going to pick our lettuce? Who's going to fold our beds at the hotels? I'm telling you, the modern day Democrats would have been the same people that were saying, what do you mean you want to free the slaves? Who's going to pick the cotton? Who's going to make my bed in the morning if I can't have slave labor? And once again, a reminder, you all know slavery wasn't the America and American history doesn't have a monopoly on slavery. An inconvenient truth, Black Africans sold their slaves that they conquered by conquering and raping and pillaging and taking down other tribes. Black slave traders and Muslim slave traders sold these Black African slaves to the Europeans, and there were free Black slave owners in America. But of course, that would be historically correct, but politically incorrect for me to mention. So I won't mention it. I love y'all, by the way. Big hug to all of y'all. I hope you have a great weekend. Let me wrap this up here, folks. Donald Trump sketches plan to deport many and recall some migrants for farm and hotel jobs. So yesterday in his cabinet meeting, President Trump outlined his plan to recall some of the illegals he's deporting from jobs in the farm and hospitality sectors. But here's how he's doing it. Do you remember at the beginning of this live stream of this report, I said that President Trump was thinking outside the box and he was doing this without war and saving us money and manpower. How's he doing this? Because he's having people by the thousands self-deport. Because he's made this promise that if you self-deport, then try to legally come back to the United States, you can do so. But if you stay here illegally and then we deport you on our dime, you cannot come back in. And that is exactly what he said. He said it's a very big self-deportation operation that we're starting. This is what he told his cabinet. We're going to work with people so that if they go out in a nice legal way and go back to their country, we're going to work with them right from the beginning on trying to get them back in legally. So it gives them a real incentive to leave. Otherwise, they could never come back. And he's talking about an exit and return process that could be as quick as 60 days. 60 days. I'm telling you, every single day that President Trump and his cabinet are working on solutions, not doing things the usual Washington, D.C. way, by the time the midterms of next year, what are the Democrats going to do? It's just going to be name calling and Orange Man is bad because he's orange. Because President Trump just solved one of their big issues. Who's going to pick our lettuce? Who's going to work as maids? As if only illegal aliens work as maids. What did we ever do? What did all the agriculture in the northern part of the United States do for decades and centuries without illegal immigration? I wonder. So President Trump, by the time 2026 rolls around, this should be in place. And people who self-deport, now there's going to be a whole system where they're going to have to be vouched for by the farms they worked for, the hotels they worked for. So it's going to be a referral program. They're going to be fully vetted, and then they'll be able to come back in. It looks like with some sort of work permit. Well, that solved that issue. President Trump will have solved one of the biggest talking points of the Democrats. What are they going to run on? By the time we get to midterm 2026, they should be in place. And they won't be able to use it as a talking point against President Trump and immigration. And the last thing I want to mention is this is so fun to watch. We got General of the World Health Organization, Tedros, out there begging the United States to rejoin the UN-run agency, the World Health Organization. I hope there will be some formal engagement for a very honest and candid dialogue for the U.S. to come back to the World Health Organization. I've said it many times. The U.S. withdrawal from the WHO is a lose-lose. A lose-lose for who? We know that Tedros and the World Health Organization were shilling for China during the pandemic, and President Trump put an end to that. Once again, with his outside-the-box thinking, separating us from the globalists, from Chinese encroachment, without firing a shot, without putting any one of our great men and women in uniform in harm's way, doing it by saving money through Doge and having people self-deport as opposed to us deporting them. President Trump speaks in simple terms because he's a communicator, but he truly is a brilliant man. I'll be back this weekend. Hit the like button and make sure you hit the notification bell.